Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Gannon. I'm the founder of Captivate Talent, and today I have the pleasure. I'm joined by Roi Ravhon, co-founder and CEO of Finout. Roy, thanks for taking the time to join us today. Today, our topic is all about transitioning from founder-led sales and making big steps. But I'd love for you to just give us a little introduction on yourself, who you are, and what Finout is.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chris, for having me. So my name is Rui, one of the founders and CEO of Finout. Finout is a 3.5 year old company. We help enterprise manage and control the cloud spend. So taking bills from multiple different cloud providers and other service providers, helping to contextualize them, show what's the cost for each organizational meaning, like what's the cost per team, per business units, per product line, for those kind of stuff. Help with budget, forecast, financial planning in general. Help create a better FinOps culture in the organization and get everyone in line with their spend.
And have fun while doing it, right?
Always. That's
Yeah.
we put the fun in FinOut.
So Roy, well, thank you so much for joining us today. One of the questions we get asked all the time, we deal with early stage hiring, as you know. When is the right time for a founder to transition from founder-led sales to start building a team and thinking about hiring a dedicated sales leader? So I want to know, I'm curious from you, when did you felt like, what was the key indicator for you that it was time to transition and find a dedicated salesperson?
Yes, I think first of all, there's no right answer. Everyone who starts to wants to get like the a cheat sheet for how to run a startup and
Yeah.
how to build GTM. And unfortunately, that's not the case. And I'm disclaiming everything I'm saying that, this is only our very, very small subset of data set and something that just worked for us. Uh, but we started hiring someone back in Israel. So our company is like Israeli based, and also we have a big branch in New York. So firstly, we wanted to hire a go-to-market person that's going to be very close to us. We knew that just by getting someone that's going to start for demanding leads, that's going to start to change the organization a bit. So you started to think about like what can be sold. You started to get in front of more customers, and we're all engineering founders. So we never sold something before Finout. So having someone with us relatively early on was a decision that we made. At some point, we decided that we saw that we're managing to sell the product well in Israel and EMEA, and we started to understand the market a bit better. But getting and do it across the pond was a very different ballgame. US enterprise is and in general like corporate culture is not something that we're yes Israeli knows. We can barely speak the language and starting to get into cultural stuff and the relationship, the trust that we needed to build with US customers was very, very different. And at some point, we decided that we need an American VP of sales. We need someone who can be the one that can help us with that transition. We already made the first bunch of sales. Now we need to go to the bigger fish. Our product it starts to get a lot more enterprise ready, and we need to change the conversation with whom we speak. There can be like a very long discussion of when do you need the VP title or not, but this is where we started.
Well, thinking actually back before that, because I struggled with this when I started everything. How did you manage the balance between running the business strategically, developing a product, and selling before you hired this person? How did you? Because I'm assuming you were the co-founder side of that had to do the sales.
Yeah. In Finout, like since us is very early on, we're a very, very revenue-driven organization. Like almost everything that we do is supposed to generate revenue for the company in some point or another. So, when we look at features that you want to build, when you look at the innovation that we did and everything that we took like bold product decisions and really changed the break like basic paradigms was always because this is what we heard from the market and this is what we think that can get us to the next level. So we bought a solution called Chorus AI, which records
Yep.
all conversation very early on, and we got into we open it access for the entire organization. Like everyone can hear and listen to customer calls, especially the product and engineering organizations. So we're talking to customer, they're telling us what they don't like about the product. When we hear the same feedback like multiple different times, we go back, we understand like what we did wrong and how we can build that. And Finout is a big product. We first like really underestimate how complicated it's gonna be, and like with more and more feedbacks that we started to get, we started to like understand the depth of what we need to build and what's going to be like the minimal viable product that we can sell to. Outside of our comfort zone, outside of like the Israeli companies that are very like innovative and taking early adopters, and the kind of market that we can get into. So I think getting into some of our largest Fortune 50s enterprise customers, it's a very different story. They won't be as tolerable. They won't be, as early adopters, and they won't buy you just because you have one very cool feature. So balancing between what we need to build and what we hear from the market and what we want to innovate versus what the market is pulling us to do was a constant battle and debate. This is something we keep on doing till this day, and I don't anticipate us stop doing that. Like this is the culture of who we are. We started very early on, and we're letting the market dictate the vision of what we're going to do, but we always put the Finout sparkle on that, which really makes the whole difference.
Oh, that actually brings up. So last month we did an interview with somebody in the UK about launching into the US, and you've had very, very similar experience. So where were you? What were some of the indicators from the market here in the US that made you? What was the validation to launch in the US? Because we see companies come way too early sometimes, and then we see companies miss their opportunity and come too late. So how did you find that sweet spot? Because I think you did find it, if you ask me.
Um, it's a great question because like when we designed the solution in Finland, we talked mostly to Israeli customers. So we built something super advanced and super technical, and then like I remember Asaf, our CPO, and I flew to reInvent 2021, and we started like talking to a bunch of like prospects, and we figured out like, no, guys, we're so off what the US market is actually
Yeah.
like expecting, and we started to understand that there's very big difference between how the Israeli market behaves and how the US market behaves, especially like the more traditional US market. Um, so we always strive to have those conversations, even without like trying to sell. Just get on the phone with us, see the demo, tell us what you like, tell us what you don't like, and start to get like as many validations as possible into like what prospective US buyers can actually do. And there's a very big need for validations.
Yeah.
So working with a young Israeli company that didn't raise that much money and don't invest in PR to get into to a big enterprise. Probably something like, and no one's want to be the one that's bet
Yeah. Yeah.
on us. And once you start to get the first initial set of customers, suddenly we have big logos. We have like giant companies that's relying on Finout. And then when you're talking to the next batch of companies that are even bigger, there's something to have. Okay, so we have that validation, we have that kind of trust, and it's a
Yeah.
rolling snowball effect. So the first couple of sales were hard. We needed to convince folks, and some of what we need to do, and what I talked about before is getting that VP of sales, getting the
Mm.
first go-to-market representative that they're suddenly talking to an American. It's in New York in the same time zone. We can fly in to meet them. We can start to bring that kind of trust into. We're not a forsaken company from a forsaken place. We are, but
Yeah.
we also have someone in New York, and we have something that we can start to build that the trusting relationship. And this was a huge investment for us over the last 12 to 24 months.
So I know it was a little while ago now, but thinking back when you were starting to think about making that first US VP of sales hire, did you have customers in the US already? Did you have pilots at least running? Was there that product market fit validation?
So we had a couple, but not enough. Like if you look at the textbook of like recommendations, we if we go by that, we would hire the VP of sales significantly later. But we decided to make that kind of flip because we felt that we don't have enough knowledge in how to get into US business. And if you're going to hire someone too junior, they're not going to help us with that. So it was always like the right balance. I know when I talked to you guys about I want to hire our first VP of sales, I wasn't really sure like what's the profile I'm looking for. So I started to talk to many candidates, and some were like, just talking about designing and let's spend the next year on like the prioritizing everything and pay me, draw for 12 months. No, this is not the mentality that we're looking for. I need someone hungry and someone that's going to actually like get in place and start to work and believe in what we're doing. And when we met Jeremy, our VP of sales, he worked for an Israeli company before. He built a startup. He decided like to move on. He planned his career. He was like watching YouTube videos of what's FinOps while having dinner with his wife for 6 months until like he got into a very deep understanding of what we have. Like, okay, this is the persona. Like this is what the type of person that we want to have with us, and this is someone who can lead US team. And it was like a premature VP of sales hire, but not a premature person, if that makes sense.
Well, to some of those qualities and skills you listed off were understanding your company culture. So they worked with a similar company of Israeli or foreign background before. They worked for a startup before. What else did you look for in Jeremy aside from his poor wife having to sit through 6 months of FinOps YouTube videos? What were some other qualities that you were targeting in that person?
It's something that we still value, like in many candidates still till this day with almost anyone that we hire. So they're the type of companies that are hiring like very senior folks that's going to start to lead the way and then hire their team. But the senior person is not going to essentially do anything. They're more of a designer persona.
Yeah.
At Finout, we really value builders. We
Yeah.
value people who, roll up the sleeve, lead by example, prove yourself, then build a team, then start to have something and start to grow together with us. So it's something we did most of the time when we hire senior folks. We continue to do it for the future. At some point you will need the very senior people who knows what they're doing. But
Yep.
I think it's a very important cultural trait in Finout to do. And it goes like across the entire organization, and something that we really value in people, and was a very big emphasis on, especially on the first US hire.
Well, I think that's where so many people get it wrong. They hear VP and they assume it's a scaler. And there's such a difference between builders and scalers. And you could find, and we find in the startup world, like there are true builders and VPs can be builders. You just need to find the right one.
Yeah, exactly.
What are some steps you took as you built a team with Jeremy and around Jeremy? How did you effectively integrate the existing team back in Israel, and how did you integrate culture?
So it's an ongoing effort for Finout, honestly. So Israel and US are very different. Although we think that we're similar because like Israel grew up on US culture. We watch US movies, we watch US TVs, like US sports, like we're in that. But the cultures are very different. And something that we're very liberal from the first go is like being very liberal with that travel budget. So we got Jeremy here multiple times. We flew like I'm in New York, like every month, and we do it even if I don't have anything to do. I'm coming. I'm spending time in the office. I'm talking to folks, and it starts to build that kind of trust and culture between the two sides. Now that we gotten bigger and we hired our own office out of WeWork. So we hired an office manager and we hired an Israeli as an office manager who lives in New York because we thought that it can be a good way to maybe start to bridge a bit of the gaps.
Yeah.
And we try to do whatever we can cross sites. So we need to understand the cultural difference and treat it with respect, but also try to bridge that as much as we can and make sure that people feel very comfortable while respecting like their own boundaries, respecting their own traits. I can't say that we nailed it. It's an ongoing thing and will always be an ongoing thing.
Yeah, I think it's integrating culture and merging and instead of bringing your culture.
Yeah,
And I think that's where so many companies get it wrong. We historically here, the U.S. has not taken kindly to other people trying to bring their culture. We like to integrate it and make it our own and mesh it all
100%.
together.
And with the first
Uh,
couple of hires, we also we always made sure that uh, they can deal with Israelis. So like,
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
writing a short email. I'm not mad at you. I'm just like, I'm being concise
yeah,
with
yeah,
time. So like, no pleasantries as a country. Like, speak your mind. Don't be afraid to tell what you think, and it's go vice versa. So it was something that we made it kind of basic kind of mutual expectation setting with the first bench of hires, so to make sure that they understand what they're getting into. And it's something that we find many Americans even like value at some point. Like, yeah, let's get bullshit. Let's just talk and let's do so.
yeah,
It
yeah.
can be very intimidating for some, but it can be very good for others. So we need to find like the right folks that match what we do.
Well, I think too in this world, this post-COVID world, we've overemphasized sometimes the ability to just jump on a Zoom, and we undervalue jumping on a plane. And I can attest, I've seen you get on that plane way ahead of me, in a much nicer seat that you have the airline miles to prove that you are here every other month. And so many founders discount that, getting on a plane and just being here often, to understand who's working for them and who's working in the company and what the dynamic is maybe across the ocean. Um,
It's pretty cool.
how did you, bringing when you're hiring, a first sales hire in a new country and you have some legacy hires in a function, how did you define new roles and responsibilities? Did you, once Jeremy started, was it, hey, everything US based is his, every deal, every piece of revenue, or was there an integration or a cutoff period?
Again, I don't think there's a right formula because it really depends on like who's the
Mm,
existing folks. I do believe in like when hiring a new leader to have a very clear cutoff. So like
mm,
once I'm hiring a VP of sales, every sales function in the company reports to that VP the second he starts working for us. So every like slow transition always lead to a lot more tension. It's like usually like easier just ripping off the bandage.
yeah,
So it's true for everything. Like every senior hire that we have, like when you start, you have your 100 days, to be able
yep,
to understand, but you're the manager from day one. And this is something that we did with Jeremy as well. It took some adjustments, but eventually, we're hiring a VP of sales because we need a VP of sales, and we're not hiring someone that can be a partial whatever.
yeah.
This really aligns everything directly and immediately around that.
What about once Jeremy started and you had your new VP of sales, you talked about recording all the calls in the company and you had a database, and I'm sure you built a playbook off of that before he started. Did you hand him your playbook day one? Was there discussion of which parts you take? Did he bring his own playbook in? How was that transition made?
So I don't think we nailed it yet,
Mm,
that time. So it's something that we brought Jeremy in order to build together. So we thought that we knew how to sell Finout because this is like the way that we did, and we started evolving that. And with with every hire that we're bringing, like if I'm gonna hire someone and I'm gonna think I'm smarter than him and I know the job better, so I'm not gonna hire them. So like I brought Jeremy because I need someone that can help me build the right playbook. I need someone that can help us take like the company forward and get into the right place. So hiring someone to tell them exactly what to do, I don't think it's super beneficial. So we worked a lot on that together. We spent many hours talking about Finout, what we're selling, how we're selling, what's our differentiations. Made many conversation with customers and continue to design it, and we continue to perfect it like constantly. But now we got to the point that the machine is relatively working. We're selling deals without me being involved, now without Jeremy being involved, and it starts to get to the wider kind of thing because we built something that is work, but it's ever evolving. There's not going to be a time when I say like, okay, we got everything right.
In terms of making sure that you had him off to a good start, did you bring in any systems, or were there consultants before you had Jeremy physically start in the role? How'd you ramp him? Was there anything you did before he started or after he started to get him up to speed quicker or to optimize him in the role?
Not something like on the top of my head, but like we we spend a lot of time trying to design it. So at some point we did hire some an agency to help us with figuring out outbound, and we hired like consultants to do whatever. But
Mm,
it's not something you can outsource. How to sell the product is something you need to understand, and
yeah.
there's not the magic formula here. You need to spend hours and hours and hours and hours talking to customers, breaking down their feedback, understand what's working, what's not, be very critical of yourself, not looking for excuses, not blaming the customer for not understanding what you're doing, blame yourself for not explaining it right, and like understand what's need to be changed and be very iterative and go over and over and over and over.
In terms of making sure you make the right hire, assuming we could both agree because he's still there and I've had lunch with him, Jeremy was the right hire. When did you know? Like, what was there a benchmark? Was there a thing that happened? The first couple months, everyone's a little nervous when they make a hire of that caliber, especially maybe if it was a little on the early side. When did you go to sleep at night and maybe you didn't wake up thinking about, did I make the right decision?
So I think when we start to get into larger organizations, and I seen the way that he manage the process and the questions that he asked. And once customer didn't know he was sales, he could actually speak the FinOps language,
Wow.
and be like very very proficient at what he was and what he did. And I stopped running demos, and we hired our head of sales engineering at some point. And I just went on calls with them and just said, I'm like, operate everything. They changed everything, and they're like, they perfected it. They're like, I can be a lot more relaxed now that we made the right
Yeah.
hire, even if revenue still didn't ramp, but I knew it's coming. Like I seen what happened, and then quarter after quarter after quarter, we started beating our targets like crazy.
Well, actually, that leads me to another question. I've seen situations where founders, they just hire somebody to run a function and then they like move on and they go back into product or they go back into developing and they forget about it. How close, um, when you onboarded your VP of sales, how how much time did you spend with them in the first 6 months? Like, were you on every call? Were you here more than you typically are from a travel perspective and vice versa?
Yeah. So, before having Jeremy, I didn't have many reasons to come to New York. I just like came for interviewing and to meet potential customers and investors and whatever. But like now that we hired Jeremy, I try to be a lot more often, and
Hmm.
not only me. We got many people from Fino to come, and we got Jeremy to come here. We try to spend a lot of time together and invest as much as we can. As a CEO, I feel that I need to be like a different places in the company as we mature. So at the time we need to figure out like how we're selling FinOut and what's the process going to look like and how we're building the pipeline. So this is where I spend most of my time. And now, in the past couple of quarters, when you got that right, there are other places that need me more. So, I'm spending less time currently with the sales team and more time with engineering and more time with marketing.
Yeah.
But like this is where we need to scale right now, and it's going to change again in a month or two. So at the time, yeah, like sales was the number one thing we needed to figure out, and we need to understand like what's the proper process, what's the proper demo, what's a POC looks like, what's good, what's bad, what's our ICP, and we spend a lot of time together.
Yeah, I know you've said a couple times that there's no one piece of advice, but I think any piece of advice is after you hire that person, you need to spend as much time with them as possible. You can't walk away and go back to the thing you like doing, or maybe prefer to do more than sales. Uh, my last kind of question for you, it's one of my favorite topics, obviously, around headcount. Um, assuming, I know you had probably a hiring plan and a strategy before you hired Jeremy about what those departments should look like. Once he got on board and got his feet under him, how much did he drive change in that plan, or was it talked about before you hired him? How did that formulation come, and what did it look like after he was hired?
Yeah, so it's a question almost in every senior role that I'm hiring. Like, what do you need? Like in headcount, like
Yep.
design the perfect department. And this is like a good testament of people. So some would say like, yeah, I need to hire that, and that. I'm like, okay, you're not the right person. So the right answer is just you're like, I need to start to understand what's happened. I need to start to get into the weeds of everything and start to design and understand like what are the gaps are. So yeah, we had some kind of image of what we needed to do, but we had very like a lot of missing numbers. So something I really like about sales is that it's very numbers driven. So you take the ARR goal of the company, then you track back how your go-to-market
Mhm.
department seems. So obviously, Jeremy had lots of input on like who we need to hire. Do we need to hire that first? That first? Like Jeremy brought our head of sales engineering, which was one of the best things that ever happened to Finout, and it was like in the right time. And someone that I probably wouldn't have hired without that reference. And VPs should have a lot of input into how the department are built and like what's the goal here. And now we're applying a lot more math into how sales is designed. We're early growth stage company, so P&L starts to be the king. So we need to make sure that everything is designed, everything is according to benchmarks, and we're not doing like weird stuff. But it's we're budgeting like every month, like we're looking at
Yeah.
everything, like who should we hire, where, when, which geography, what's the specific skill set, what's the seniority level. It's a very I love like hiring plan. It's a super interesting discussion.
Right. I'm gonna ask you as we close out two pieces of advice because you've done two big transitions, transitioning from founder-led sales and then entering to the US. So transitioning from founder-led sales and making that first sales hire, what's one piece of advice if there was you a couple of years ago, if you can go back and give yourself a tip or a trick or maybe something that you did that you developed a little that you'd give to somebody else, what would it be?
Um, so I think the one thing that made this transition work is hiring someone that you really trust and is close enough to your beliefs. So you need to work very, very closely with that person. You need to have to share the same vision. You need to share the load. But I'm very glad that we didn't hire someone who was just talking about doing instead of doing. So I think personally, like first sales hire, someone who can actually roll up their sleeves, someone who you really you can spend a lot of time with because you're gonna spend a lot of time with, and that's like the number one emphasis here for
And
me.
then my second part of that is I think you've done really well transitioning into the US market. And as you know, we work with one or two international companies from time to time. What's one piece of advice you'd give to an international founder about entering this market, what they should expect?
Get a local team. I think there's a very, very big difference in like the cultural conversations, the which university they went to, what was the weather yesterday, and who played which sports game in which arena, and what was the score. So this is very embedded into US corporate culture, and it's not something you can mimic. It's something you need to like the pleasantries that the first 10 minutes of every conversation is something that especially as Israelis, we feel like really uncomfortable in because we don't know how to participate. And when you
Mm.
say like to Americans running the same conversation, it's very different. It's something that is we can't mimic, and it's something that is just critical for sales life cycles, especially in enterprise. So trying to do that without a local US team, I think would have been, I'm not saying impossible because many companies did it, but significantly harder than what it should have been.
Well, let me ask you, do you have a local sports team here in the US?
So I actually got Asaf, our CPO, is really into NFL, and he started to
Yeah.
get me into that. And I started to be a very big fan of the sports because it helps me with the pleasantries and helped me
Yeah.
understand like everything. And then I got hooked. So I started too late to be a very big fan of one specific sports team. Uh, but I'm a huge fan of the NFL. I watch most of the games. I'm coming, like if I'm coming to the US, I'm taking the Saturday flight so I can spend Sunday watching football at the random Midtown bar all day.
Yeah.
That's something that Finout gave me. Started with just talking to US customers and ended up being something I really like doing.
A British leader that I worked for a long time ago, he was a Jets fan, and no one ever understood why anyone would want to be a Jets fan. And he finally told me one night, it's like just so I have something to talk about on Monday morning with everyone. And it was
Exactly.
genius. Yeah, yeah. Great. Roy, thank you so much for your time. If people
Of
want to
course.
find you, where should they find you? LinkedIn?
LinkedIn, the best way.
Really, really appreciate it. You've given some great advice, and I hope only the best for you and your company and your team. You've built an incredible team there, and we can't wait to see what you guys keep doing.
Thank you so much, Chris.